What's up, everybody? It's Dakota, and today we're going to be kind of giving my thoughts and opinions on the ban list that happened yesterday. At least by the time this video goes up, I am recording it today, as the announcement was made, I suppose. And while there's only a few changes in the format, the reasoning for some of the other lack of changes should be said for like the other formats and stuff. I think is pretty interesting, and I think is kind of bad, honestly. Like the announcement itself is like what it changed is good. So, as you can see and kind of hanging out, Winota joined our forces and expressive iteration were banned in Pioneer, with expressive iteration being banned in Explorer as well, and Winota already being banned in Explorer, as the note suggests. So, real quickly to go over, basically, Winota Joiner at Forces was probably the best and most played deck in the format. Playing Winota Joiner of Forces and a bunch of dorks slash like really good non-human creatures low on the curve to basically then use them to attack the turn you play Winota to hopefully put like Tovolar's Huntmaster into play, which is basically like a Grave Titan but makes wolves instead of zombies. Um, there were some like combo variants that were playing the Blade Master from like Strixhaven that gave your attacking creatures double strike, playing Kenrith, the Returned King, and things like that. Essentially, just to either put like a ton of creatures into play that either killed your opponent or you just built such a massive board that your opponent really wasn't going to be able to out it, and you were going to get more Winota triggers if they didn't kill your Winota. Um, Also, you could find Winota off of Winotas, and you could have Winota attacking, so it kind of gives like pseudo haste if Winota is like your, a 4/4 is like your best pick, or maybe your only hit with the cards that you have. Also, they really couldn't be beaten in combat because she has this text at the very bottom, of her paragraph that says it gains indestructible until end of turn. So really, you couldn't interact with the creatures in combat. Like you had to deal with them on your turn. So like board wipes and stuff were like fine in dealing with said creatures, but having like anything short of like exile-based removal, you were not beating any of the things that Winota ended up putting into play off the triggers. Especially, like they'd have to whiff on like six card or yeah, they'd have to whiff 3 times, seeing 6 cards each time, which is almost impossible. I would say. I'm sure there's like some numbers, but it's not possible. Expressive iteration we've seen a lot in Modern, and I believe it sees play in Legacy as well. Look at the top 3 cards: one to your hand, one to exile, one to the bottom of your library, and then you can play the exile card this turn. Predominantly used in Modern, usually to hopefully hit like a bauble or hit like a land drop. Sometimes it hits a spell that you like don't really need. Um, and obviously, essentially drawing 2 cards, for 2 mana is very good, even at sorcery speed for the modern format. Just creates a lot of value for those decks and stuff. So now they're banned from Pioneer. We'll go over what was noted. Um, Good thing to note too that for the other formats section, essentially for the lack of changes, they were choosing only to make Pioneer essentially a Pioneer ban list at this time, and they did examine other formats, but from the sounds of it, which we'll get into in a second, changes don't look good for other formats, which is a little troublesome in my opinion. But so it says, as noted, updates. We wanted Pioneer to provide a diverse and experience as possible and built out of an ever-growing collection of standard paths. Over time, it has been clear that Night will notice pressing diversity as the power and consistency have drastically reduced incentives to play other linear creature-based strategies. Not only is it a resilient mid-range deck that can leverage many powerful mana creatures available in the format, but explosive draws involving the deck's namesake can create unassailable battlefield states as quickly as turn 3. Due to its large metagame share, frustrating removal check gameplay, it's banned. Expressive iteration has been a multi-format all-star since it was released in Strixhaven. Um, Fuels a lot of successful Izzet strategies and card selection, card advantage. Um, Crazy enough, they did not go after Treasure Cruise or Dig Through Time, which on just I'd say like on flat rate, obviously Treasure Cruise being a 1 mana draw 3, Dig Through Time being a 2 mana look at 7 pick 2. Expressive Iteration at least has like a slight color restriction, obviously needing red instead of double blue, and I guess always being able to be cast on turn two, which is like its upside, but just on the amount of cards that you get to see and things like that, these two cards are just way better at that. So they go on to say, although we recognize that there are several other powerful card draw spells in the format in Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time, we currently believe that Delve spells contribute to blue decks and Pioneer having a unique identity among Eternal formats, as Pioneer's card pool has fewer stronger cantrips and no fetch lands. We are hoping many of the Delve cards continue to be part of the format in a more moderate power level compared to how they are in other non-rotating formats. To lower the win rate of the wide variety of Izzet decks and bring them further in line with other strategies in the format, for making them special and Pioneer, its expressive iteration. It's worth noting that we'll continue to align Pioneer ban announcements in action with Explorer, which is why that iteration was also banned in Explorer and why Winota was already banned in Explorer. However, Winota is banned in Pioneer, so we'll leave it banned in Explorer going forward. So for Pioneer in general, of course, like from what we'd seen and some of the decks that we went over on this channel as well, we know that Winota was like the top performing deck in the format. Mono green, very powerful deck. There were some Izzet strategies, like you had the Izzet Phoenix, you had like the Izzet Thing in the Ice decks, you had the Izzet like Ledger Shredder decks, you had some decks that were combinations of the three. That there were these kind of like tempo-y decks that you kind of see in Modern with like the Murktide deck. Just obviously not having like Murktide and things like that and Dragon Rage Chandler, but that's beside the point. So like with these decks kind of getting nerfed, obviously Naya Winota just doesn't exist anymore. I don't think there is a card off the top of my head that I can think of that pays you off kind of like Winota does. So that deck's basically gone, and we could possibly see like Bant Spirits or some other like tempo-y like creature deck kind of come back to the forefront. Maybe we could see some other like aggro decks in the format, maybe like a Rise of Mono Black. I know that was like one of my personal favorite decks when the format was around when Smuggler's Copter was legal. So hopefully we can see some other like aggressive strategies to try to combat the essentially fact that mono green is now going to be one of the top decks in the format, and you're going to have like mono red and stuff like that. It's proved to be good. Maybe can afford to be a little bit bigger instead of having to play towards like the leaner side of things. Becoming more of like a go bigger like mid-range deck. But only time will tell. I know that if I were to pick a deck today going forward in the Pioneer format, I would probably lean more towards either a deck that's playing Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time and can play it effectively. So maybe going towards still an Izzet deck because it basically still gets to play those deck. It just doesn't have expressive iteration, which I think is fine for the most part. Or probably just picking up mono green. I think mono green would be the safer of the two for the fact that obviously nothing changes. It's very powerful, and it gets to tweak some of its options now that it doesn't have to worry about Winota decks just like slamming a bunch of things into play. So um, that's that's it for Pioneer. That's all I'm gonna comment on for Pioneer. Format I think gets better overall with these two cards getting banned, but I think there maybe needed to be something more to just stop like mono green from possibly maybe completely dominating the format. That would be like my very early guess as to what the format would look like. Is just a bunch of like mono green devotion decks and maybe some like mono red and things like that. To the other formats, standard, and essentially noting that where's it? The ladder shows the standard metagame being in a healthy spot. Various three-color decks being the most played archetypes. Esper and Grixis with Jeskai variants growing in popularity, but apparently remaining in healthy population and win rates. Runeforge champion decks, which were the essentially the Naya enchantment decks that played a bunch of runes and got to play them for free with the other creature that made them cost one less, while this one made them cost one. And also mono white aggro have become less popular over time. Mono green being a popular deck, showing popular win rate or high win rates against the more popular archetypes, which to them indicates a good metagame that continues to evolve, and the current state reflects a good levels of diversity. Modern, a little disappointed here because they don't mention the really like the Yorion decks. I don't think because it's a lot of it is just about like the Murktide deck because it is the most played deck. But I think and I think it's a healthier most played deck than something like four color control and things like that, which I think if it was more affordable would be the most played deck in the format by far. With again like money borrowing, barring any issue. So it shows great diversity, aggro tempo combo control, ramp all represented in the 10 most played decks, with Izzet hovering right around a 50% win rate. The top decks show strength and weaknesses against each other. It looked like plenty of room for less popular rogue decks to be successful. Which I don't think is necessarily fair, because I just think the fact that you have like Yorion continue to live in the format while like other decks have essentially gotten to fall out of favor with other companions getting banned um, is pretty ridiculous. But I don't print the cards, I don't make the formats and things like that. I don't make decisions. Probably a good thing that I don't, but that's just me. Legacy, if you remember a while back, Ragavan was banned from like the Izzet Delver decks. I think people were even playing like Grixis and things like that. Um, it says that it came down, apparently, like the win rate and stuff like that. Now shows appropriate strengths and weaknesses against other most played archetypes. Reanimator control, resource denial, which would be like death and taxes, and like I would even think lands up to a certain point, even though that might fall into like the uh, combo archetype. Are all additional macro archetypes that are seeing success. Continue to keep an eye out for potentially unhealthy or unfun play patterns. Otherwise, natural metagame forces currently look sufficient to handle another short-term shifts in deck popularity. I did see on social media that Izzet Delver is still like 20+% of like the format, as according to like MTG Goldfish and things like that. So obviously, if 10% of the metagame is considered healthy to them, and a good benchmark, then more than double the amount of decks being seen play in Legacy are just one archetype should not indicate a healthy format. But again, what do I know? Vintage at this point, really, people just don't care about vintage, I don't think, which is kind of sad because the format itself is a lot of fun. But sample sizes are very small, but essentially the same thing it's said for all the other formats. It seems to be in a good place right now, a good diversity, which uh, really, I don't really play standard, so I can't really comment on it. Modern, and what I've heard from like Legacy and Vintage, there probably needs to be some sort of change that happens between these three, but I don't think Wizards is going to touch them, and we can only hope that Yorion would be banned in Modern. So overall, for Pioneer, the ban announcement was very good. I could see it possibly maybe being problematic and maybe seeing another ban or two coming for Pioneer, depending on how well Mono Green and some of the other archetypes do in the format. But I think like Nykthos decks could possibly be the next like problematic deck. I think a draw to Pioneer would be if the format were to slow down. So taking away like Nykthos or something like that would have been really sweet. But if you stuck around this long, make sure to leave a comment down below how you feel about the banner restricted announcement. Did did they knock it out of the park? Did we do a good job, or is there still some work to do in other formats? I'm personally in the camp of more needed to be done in other formats, and probably even more in Pioneer, just as like a knee-jerk reaction. But let me know what you think in the comments. Of course, please consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see more Pioneer modern stuff and things like deck techs, burn reviews, theory crafting, all that fun stuff. And of course, leave a like on this video. All that fun, happy stuff. That's going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next video.